All right, everyone. I want to thank you for tuning in to another edition of our Lunch and Learn series. My name is Mary Kate Harrison, and I work at the Arkansas Alumni Association. And I want to thank you for tuning in today. We have a special guest today, Deacue Fields. He's the Dean of the Dale Bumpers College of Agriculture and Life Sciences, and he's going to be joined by our President-elect of the National Alumni Board of Directors, Mr. Ron Rainey. So I'm going to introduce Dr. Ron Rainey. He is, like I said, the Arkansas Alumni Association National Board of Directors President-elect. He has over 20 years of experience in higher education, building and delivering programs and resources to serve the agriculture sector. As an economist, Ron works with all segments of the food production and distribution system, including growers, processors, and wholesale retail companies within Arkansas and throughout the Southeast region. He serves on the board of directors for the Arkansas Farmers Market Association and the Arkansas State Horticulture Society. And on a national level, Ron participates in the Food Distribution and Research Society, having served as the society's president. He's very active in his community, serving in leadership roles for several organizations and volunteering for the Arkansas Food Bank Network as a harvester. He loves everything Razorback, but more importantly, he believes in the value of an education. He's an active member of 2 alumni boards, the past president of the Dale Bumpers College of Agriculture, Food, and Life Sciences Alumni Society, and the Capital Chapter of Little Rock. So I'm going to hand it off to Dr. Ron Rainey.
Well, thank you so much, Mary Kate. Really excited for this opportunity and want to just take this opportunity to thank you all for taking time to join us this afternoon as we discuss a topic that's near and dear to my heart and actually very important to the state of Arkansas economically. As incoming president of the Arkansas Alumni Association, I'm excited to visit with you today as we discuss Arkansas and its agriculture industry. Today, we'll be exploring the agriculture sector, its many economic contributions, and we will also be looking at its response and its resiliency throughout this pandemic. I'm delighted to have with us today to lead this discussion, Deacue Fields. Dean Fields is the Dean of the Bumpers College of Agriculture, Food, and Life Sciences. He came here in 2018 and worked diligently, providing leadership for the college to enrich faculty engagements, student experiences, and industry collaborations. Welcome, Dean Fields.
Thank you, Dr. Rainey. And also thank you to the Alumni Association for this opportunity to participate in the Lunch and Learn. And thank you to all of you who have decided to be a part today. I'm very excited about this conversation to talk about some of the things happening in agriculture and also some things happening in our college. I think all of us can say that we are definitely facing tremendous challenges and also opportunities that no one has ever seen given this pandemic. So I think though we can speak to the resiliency of our university and our college during this time. So again, thank you for this opportunity.
And thank you for taking time to join us. Let's move to our topic, discussing the ag industry and Bumpers College. First, I just wanted to give a little background. So we often hear the University of Arkansas being a land grant institution. What does that mean?
Okay, so that's one of the attractive things about the University of Arkansas is that it's a land grant and also the flagship university in the state. And that's often rare to have both that land grant and flagship status. But, to be a land grant, what it really means is, the university through the 1862 Morrill Act has a mandate to serve the citizens of the state. And that mandate is serving the citizens through teaching, through research and extension. As compared to other universities, I think we have a unique linkage with extension and a presence in every county throughout the state. And so my goal is, since being here, has been to continue to strengthen those partnerships, especially the partnerships with those county programs throughout the state. When we think of Arkansas, I look at the size of the state. We only have about 3 million people, citizens in the state, but agriculture is huge. So we're looking at just market value of ag products at over $10 billion with only 3 million people. So if we do that on a per capita basis, we're ranked like number 6 in the United States when we look at agriculture per capita. And so, you know, agriculture and food is Arkansas's largest industry, and it adds a tremendous amount to the GDP of the state. And we're lucky to have some tremendous industry here with Walmart. You know, we think of Walmart, but it's really a large food company. They're the largest food retailer in the world, not just the largest retailer, but we have Tyson, Riceland, and some other large companies here that are really heavily involved. Even JB Hunt with the logistics of shipping food and agricultural products. So, you know, just thinking of where we are and where we are in the South and the prominence of agriculture in the state is a big deal for us being a land grant.
Great. I appreciate that background. I'm a product of the land grant system, being a graduate of the University of Arkansas, and actually work as an extension economist. So very familiar with those programs that are offered through our faculty, both on campus at the State Office for Extension, which is located in Little Rock, and then in the presence that we have in all of our county offices across the state, where we have faculty there to serve the needs of their community, like you say, with that land grant mission, meeting the needs of the citizens. And so one of the things I just like to highlight, if you haven't visited your county extension office, I would encourage you to reach out. They're a tremendous expert, and they are embedded. They live and work and play there within those communities, and so are a vibrant part of that fabric, and are a tremendous resource to help face some tremendous challenges that we're seeing in the pandemic. Even once we move beyond this crisis, I think they're a fantastic resource to help both our families, our farms, and then our communities. So excited for that opportunity, and appreciate your leadership and the transition that you've had as you've come into the state. So they mentioned that I'm the incoming president of the Alumni Association. So one of the areas that I hope to explore once my presidency officially launches is talking about engagement with our alums, really trying to highlight the impact of the University of Arkansas and the university, that impact that it's having in terms of supporting and uplifting the state of Arkansas, both economically and its quality of life. The Alumni Association, we seek to engage with alumni to share some of those successes. You know, we all love the Razorbacks on some level, even people that don't like the University of Arkansas, or maybe a little bit indifferent. But as alums, we get just as excited when we see the national ranking for our Walton College Business College. We get just excited when we see our poultry science or our food science program being ranked nationally, and look at the successes of our students that they're having, both as students, but then as they have in their professional lives. And so we like to share those successes. And so one of the things I really hope to highlight our engagement with alums is to share those successes as we continue to look at the innovations, the economic and cultural impact on the state. So what are some of the areas that Bumpers College is meeting their land grant mission as they're serving to create some of these successes?
Yeah, well, you know, I'll start just by kind of talking about some of the things we've done. Last summer, around this time, we actually, to try to get a good feel for what was happening in the state and look at how we could serve the state a little better, we engaged upon having 9 town hall meetings across the state. And we decided to do that as part of our overall strategic planning process. And, you know, the idea was that we not do as we sometimes do and do our strategic planning process in a vacuum and think that we know everything and have all the ideas. We took it out to the community first to kind of get an idea of how people saw us and get the perceptions and get things that we could, the blind spots that we may not have seen, to see how we could be better moving into the future. And it was a tremendous learning experience. And throughout that process, we made sure that we were able to engage with alums from the university and also just some of the people that we don't typically hear from, like the community leaders and those guidance counselors that send students our way, and parents and students who, you know, have not been engaged. And so it was a learning experience for us, but also for them to learn the breadth of what we do in our college, from the human environmental sciences side. People hear ag and they think farming, but don't think of the impact beyond the farm gate. You know, I always say that only about 15 or 16 cents out of every dollar actually goes to the farm. And we train the majority of our students for that 85 to 86 cents beyond that, you know, And that's where our students are engaged in that overall food system that I'm sure we'll talk about a little bit later. But, you know, from that, I learned that we really needed to draw in and focus a lot on attracting students and delivering programs in Eastern Arkansas. So what we did, we actually hired a flexible part-time recruiter who would live and kind of work in Eastern Arkansas. And honestly, it has paid off so far. We see, even during the pandemic, we looked at our numbers this past week, and we're about 60 students ahead of where we were last year in terms of our orientation for freshmen. So we're really excited about that. But our goal is you know, kind of looking at one of the chances focus on the future areas. You know, we want to really look at how we can train students from that area, expose them to rewarding careers in agriculture, and get them back and help grow those rural communities throughout the Arkansas Delta. So we're really focusing in on that as one of our areas for growth. When I arrived, we're looking at our recruiting strategy, and I noticed that about 58% of our students, in-state students, came from 3 counties. While we appreciate the Washington, Benton, and Pulaski County, we want to make sure that we can grow in those areas where our agriculture industry is most prevalent. So we're really trying to look at that as a focus, maintaining our hold here, but also growing in those areas where ag is a big deal for the state. So those are just a couple of things that we've started doing, just kind of looking at how we serve the state better as a land grant.
No, I appreciate those words. So I live in Little Rock, even though I'm a faculty of the university, and I often have discussions with alums talking about what is the university doing in terms of recruiting across South Arkansas, across the Delta. And so I'm appreciative of those strategic steps taken to reach out specifically to those areas, especially in light of the fact that we have tremendous industry presence there from the ag sector, in the hopes that we can continue to support those industries to bring back some trained and qualified employees that can work across that system and help to continue to grow our state. And so I actually just turned the page a little bit. So we're about to enter into the 4th month of this pandemic. Can you speak on some of the industry adjustments and university activities in response to this crisis?
Yes. So wow, we're making adjustments every day. You know, it seems like as soon as you get a plan, that plan changes and things happen differently. So this is definitely uncharted territory for all of us. But you know, I think that, you know, overall this pandemic really highlights, in my mind, and I know it may be different for others, but it highlights the importance of agriculture and food to me and the life sciences. You know, when all this happened, I'll say outside of toilet paper, what was everybody looking for? They were trying to make sure they had enough food. And so I think that just shows that food is a necessity and how important that this industry is to the nation and to the world. And you know, Arkansas is really one of the world leaders in food production. So you know, we are moving into this 4th month and, you know, looking at the fact that the U.S. consumers have always enjoyed the luxury of having the safest, the lowest cost food in the world. And we typically spend about 4.5% to 5% of our disposable income on food as compared to other countries where this is 10 or 12%. So we enjoy this because of the efficiency and the economies of scale from our large suppliers and processors such as Tyson and others that are producing these things at a large scale. But, you know, this pandemic has actually pointed out some challenges that are there because of this large specialized industry. And our retailers are looking at how they respond to that and how they work through a way to, you know, be more efficient at producing despite, you know, this pandemic and, you know, the number of employees that have to be in close proximity. We're adjusting to that. We're trying to adjust it. You know, the food supply is still safe, but you know, when this all happened, there were tremendous shocks. You know, before the pandemic, the supply chain and consumer expenditures were primarily on food away from home. You know, and we're spending a total of about $2 trillion on food. But 54% of that was spent on food away from home prior to the pandemic. So there had to be almost an immediate adjustment in the supply chain and how things work. So it's not easy to adjust when you have it, things going that way. In agriculture, we're different from the typical production. You can't stop the factory when you have live animals. So when there are chickens and hogs and livestock coming, you can't just shut down and say, we're going to stop today because the demand is not there. Those animals are coming. So we have to figure out how we adjust and move things through the supply chain. And during that time, there's shocks that farmers go through, that other parts of the industry go through. But overall, food demand has not really changed. The same demand is there. It's just how do we get it to the right channels, and how do we get that supply chain to adjust? And that's what I would say has been happening most in recent days is kind of looking at how we shift from that food away from home back to food at home and make that adjustment, where the grocery stores now are probably the bigger deal than the restaurants, and restaurants are starting to rebound. How do we get to be more agile and being able to supply, the supply chain in different areas? I think that's what we see now.
No, it's been a challenging, but it also has been an exciting time. As an extension economist, this is one of the areas that I worked with, watching that transition. Did some work specifically with farmers markets, and to all on this call, I'd just like to highlight that our food supply is safe. Our markets and our farmers and ranchers are still producing an adequate and stable supply. Our farmers markets are starting to open up across the state. I did a survey and we found that almost all the markets are planning to open, although they're practicing some social distancing. And so as consumers purchasing habits have changed, going from at home, looking at home consumption, looking at buying directly from farms and ranches, encourage people to support the farmers markets, support our local farmers, as well as going out and looking and across the opportunities to see how vibrant that economic activity is. One of the things I'd just like to highlight is one of the transitions that the ag sector, at least at the local food systems level, has gone under is quickly trying to adapt and use technology to make those online connections. So one of the biggest things we've seen is as farmers go to try to adjust to social distancing guidelines, is they've actually gone and changed up some of their distribution and marketing strategies to use online strategies more. We've seen farmers markets convert to online, almost using some type of a drive-through setup, if you will. Those opportunities are available across the state. And again, when you're making those purchases, you're supporting those local entrepreneurs. Investments in those businesses are helping those local and rural communities thrive, even amidst this time. So I encourage that conversation. As we look to go, I'd just like to think and just ask, because I've seen around the country, there's been some specific student responses or collegiate responses to serving some of this pandemic issues. Has there been any specific activities with the Bumpers College or the university in the local food system supporting this space?
Yeah, there have been some, and a lot through, it's summertime, and so our students are, accustomed to being involved in internships. And so now I think that some of the type of internships and how they're doing them has changed. And one effort that I've seen, in supporting local markets is students actually working more with those specialty crop producers and how to, get their message out better. How do they market their products differently than they have in the past? How can they, utilize social media differently than they have? How do they draw a consumer to their operation versus taking it through the typical supply chain? So as you mentioned, just overall, that local market is showing a little bit of growth during this time, and people are sourcing food a little bit differently. So we're trying to make sure our students are engaged throughout that supply chain, and a lot of it's through either just summer jobs or internships where they are working more hands-on with some local producers during this time. So those are a couple things.
No, perfect. And I'm aware of some opportunities where there's some food corps efforts. Some students have come back for the summer and they're working specifically in that social media area. I turned 50 last summer, and I'm old to really adjust to social media, using all these online technologies, but it really is a way of life, like the telephone. And so even training up, looking at some of our ag communications students and some of the talents that they bring to our businesses and our industries to make those adaptations and utilize innovations to grow their businesses. So it is an exciting time as we look at those local markets. But one of the things I'd love to highlight about agriculture is that Arkansas agriculture is actually part of the global economy. In our efforts, they have impacts and have global impacts. Can you speak on some of those activities, of some of the global activities or global engagements that the college is carrying on right now?
Yeah, so, when we think of agriculture being global, I talked a little bit about just the size of agriculture, but, when we think of our top sectors, we being a leader in poultry, one of the top 3 poultry producing states in the United States, and also being the leading rice producer in the world. We have things going on all over the world at all times, and food being shipped all over the world. When this pandemic hit, it was interesting, and I know that we have study abroad opportunities happening and students interning across the world, but it was interesting to see how many students, even during that semester, we had to get back home when the pandemic hit. So our goal is to continue to make sure that our students are aware that it's a global economy and give them opportunities to participate in that global marketplace. So when we think of impacts, the things that happen with food and agriculture in our state impacts the globe just because of how large we are. And we can see those demand shocks happening with every commodity, really. Some of the ones that we see most right now are our poultry industry and the global shocks happening there, and just about every. And we could say soybeans. We could look at beef cattle, and international trade. When we think of trade, agriculture is just a big component of trade negotiations today. And even prior to the pandemic, we were looking at how agricultural trade impacted, the state of Arkansas. So, I would say our faculty in their research and our students as well are heavily involved in just the global economy.
No, perfect. You mentioned those shocks and the impacts that we're adjusting to. I talked about social media and businesses adapting to that technology. Are there some other drivers, whether it's use of technology that's facing the sector that presents not only opportunities to overcome some challenges, but some true opportunities for some entrepreneurship across agriculture that the college is looking at?
Yeah, so when we think of things that we're embracing right now in terms of technology, we can think of things from precision agriculture to artificial intelligence that are areas that we are trying to beef up in. Really working hard first at that precision ag technology, and I'm not the specialist in this, but I'll try to briefly define what that means. So now when you think of producing food, a lot of times the equipment that's used, basically it's operated by computers to make sure we're more efficient. So a tractor may have a computer on it that tells it, it's able first to identify where pests or weeds may be, and it basically knows when and where to spray to make sure that you are not overutilizing chemicals or things like that. And so from being able to train producers on that technology to being able to actually see how we participate in improving that technology through some of our ag technology area, we're working hard to try to perform a real cluster around that in terms of our faculty hires. This gets into looking at how we embrace artificial intelligence and things like that in agriculture. That's the growth part of being able to feed 9 billion people by 2050 is really technology. Our land is not going to change. Our arable land, that's going to be about the same. So the way that we do it, is through improving our technology and the way that we utilize the resources that we have to produce more, produce more on the same amount of land, or actually less as a population continues to grow. And so we're embracing tons of technology. So we look at from our horticulture area and how we produce food there in containers like we have right behind our building to hydroponics and things like that. So I think we have a lot of exciting things happening on campus that, that people would not expect. It's more high tech than you would assume. So it's the same science that you have in any other program when you think of what we do in food science, animal science, poultry science, horticultural sciences. So the chemistry doesn't change. So, so we're doing a lot of high tech things.
Oh, it's really exciting for me. So as one of the people doing that tech transfer, trying to take that out to our citizens, or looking at the use of hot tunnels or these containers to produce food in urban areas. So urban agriculture is a thriving area as we're looking at trying to revitalize some different areas. Even in the state of Arkansas, we have some areas where they're coming in with community gardens, and they're coming in putting in some of these production systems, if you will, to serve and provide local production facilities that actually help with some of the areas that are lacking in fresh produce locally. So it's really exciting to be a part of this transition, this transformation, and to try to assist the many entrepreneurs across the state as they are engaging to create and serve markets. We talked a little bit about production, but value-added processing sector is important in terms of agriculture. But more importantly, you talk about that 85% that happens once we leave the production sector in terms of the processing, the marketing, retailing. You talk about some of those professional opportunities in retail and service sectors that you mentioned at this time, just to highlight.
Yeah, so that is a part that people actually probably see a lot of and are involved in most, but don't think about in terms of all the careers there. And our college is very broad, so I'll touch on an area that people don't think about when they think of a college of ag. That is even something like the apparel merchandising area, and product development. So we're involved from that end. And the overall food retailing space also, when you think of everything that is required once that product leaves the farm to get to your table, the food science behind that, the labeling, you want to know exactly what's in your product. That's what we're responsible for being able to do. When we think of what happens from the poultry and the animal science side at the retail level, to make sure that food is safe, those individuals are doing quality assurance or things like that at the retail level to make sure that things that you get to your plate is actually safe. So the retail sector is really the big portion of all that dollar that is spent on food is the retail sector. Going through those marketing channels, also just looking at what we have to do in terms of shipping those products, packaging those products. People don't think of all that goes into making sure that the shelf life of a product is appropriate and that it's done with appropriate packaging and covering to make sure it's healthy and safe when you're able to open it and consume it. So our students are being trained to understand that world and understand how to improve that every day. So those are a few things I would just like to mention.
Great. And so you talk about understanding that, and so that brings in another area that I know the college is engaged with, is actually looking at trying to understand the changing consumer needs and demands as they develop those products and adapt that technology. You want to talk about some of the goals that you have in terms of attracting and training up a diverse workforce to help serve this food system?
Yeah, I think when we talk about that leads leads my mind to a lot of different areas. But we're challenged in that area and trying to attract a very diverse group of students and faculty and staff as well. When I think about in terms of I'm an ag economist also, so I may throw out a lot of numbers, but thinking about buying power from our consumers. When we think of the African American and Latinx community, that group has about $3 trillion in buying power annually. And Nielsen had some facts that indicated that African American and Black consumers were actually the trendsetters that they used to look at how markets change and look at global marketing. So when we think about that, we think about how large food is and how important it is to have that supply of people who can go in and be part of making decisions related to food and be part of that overall food supply chain. And, you know, I leave there and think about, you know, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention at this point, you know, some of the things that we've had to deal with, you know, in our country and in our university and college community related to diversity and to race and racism. And I just want to at least touch on that a little bit. Everybody knows about the Black and UARK Twitter feed that went out, and it's a difficult thing to swallow. And, you know, I think as the only African-American dean and the father of 3 sons, it's a very difficult time and a frustrating time, emotional time for me. But, you know, our goal is to work hard to be part of the solution of this and look every day at how we can, you know, look at how we educate and, you know, really try to make sure that we're not diminishing the movement. You know, I will say that I anticipate that on the other side of this, there'll be a positive change. You know, the Frederick Douglass quote of "No struggle, no progress." I always think of that. But, you know, I think it's important that we do have the conversation, that we address those issues. I think addressing those issues helps us be more attractive, and we can attract students a lot easier once we kind of embrace things that we need to embrace. And I really applaud a lot of the university leadership, Chancellor Steinmetz, Interim Provost Robinson, Vice Chancellor Murphy Irby, in terms of their responsiveness to some of these things, and being willing to have that conversation and have those tough conversations and face some tough challenges there. And our college, we're being intentional as well in understanding our position in that overall conversation. I know the importance of being upfront, direct, and really embracing it head on and having that conversation. So we're doing a few things, and I think we're going to do more to try to make sure we can supply that workforce that's diverse and inclusive. So, you know, our college, you know, we have an Ag Ambassador program. One of the things that we noticed even before any of this is that we needed someone, if we were going to be serious about attracting students from diverse backgrounds, we needed an Ag Ambassador. These are the people that are our spokespersons. We needed an ambassador who was going to be able to do that as well and represent that. So we've added that as a specific Ag Ambassador slot that we'll continue to have to make sure we're covering diversity and inclusion. Right before all of this, we were, you know, right on the verge of hiring our first ever coordinator for diversity, inclusion, and equity. And so we really are hoping that we can keep that process going as soon as the hiring pause is lifted and get that person here to kind of continue to help us build. You know, we're going to require our faculty, our staff, our students also to complete cultural competence training and training on facing bias. You know, I think that's one of the things that in that conversation, there are things that we think we know and we don't know. And I think that, you know, at first doing that as a first step is something that kind of helps that conversation because, you know, a lot of times this is not intentional. It's not something that someone is directly trying to do. It's really a degree of ignorance about culture that people are facing and not understanding how comments they make or things they say or do may impact others that they are around. So we're going to try to make sure we do that early on. We're going to incorporate undergraduate and graduate students on our diversity inclusion committee and make sure that we hear their voice as we move forward. And also we're kind of ramping up that section of what we do in our UNIV courses. We want to make sure that we have an extensive unit focusing on cultural competency and bias training for our students who are coming in and taking that UNIV 1001 course. And one of the big things that we're planning right now is a forum just so students can vent and so we can hear from them. You know, I know, you know, from my experience, it's, you know, having that person that you can just vent to and you see all the social media and you want to respond to every one of them. You want to try to educate everybody individually and address every thing that you see as someone not really understanding the true issue. But I think that, you know, our students have a lot bottled up that they really want to get out, and we want to give them that comfortable space to be able to have that discussion. We want to make sure that they are able to express themselves. And I think that's the only way we're going to get better. And I appreciate the university for supporting these efforts. And I'm, you know, I don't know what I would do if I couldn't do that. You know, I think that it's just part of who I am, something I face every day. Every day that I wake up, I'm going to be an African-American male, and I'm going to face those challenges. And so I know the struggles that I've come through to get where I am. And I know that it's important to be that mentor and to at least be an ear and an advocate for making a positive difference. So I'll stop there because that's a subject I could go on and talk about a lot, but I'll stop there and just kind of move from there.
No, I appreciate your comments on that subject. I know that our many alums want to hear that, especially some of our students that are listening to this webinar, just to have that safe space. But I too, as an African American working here at the U of A, I represent faculty. I'm also an alum, and very excited to hear that the college is going to get a D&I coordinator. Most importantly, I'm a proud African American father with a 13-year-old daughter that I've already started conversations about where you want to go to college. So when I hear and I read of these experiences of current students, it forces me to take a step back. I hope it forces most and all of us to take a step back. And, you know, and we all understand that our campus is part of a society, and we know that those societal issues are reflected on our campus. But the pain that I've read, the disappointments that are shared reflect issues that go beyond equity and inclusion. It's just a belonging. And I'm hopeful that the conversation occurring with faculty and administration on campus will result in more transparency in the policies that are designed to protect and promote the student experience. So, because as an alum, our pride and our love for this university is determined by those experiences. So it's very exciting to hear the things that are happening in those conversations that are happening on campus, but also what's happening with the college, my college. But I'm not only an advocate for this campus, but I engage with business leaders, participate in conversations with parents, and recruit students, both current and future students. And so the things I would just hope that this movement will result in a safer environment that is more sense of belonging to allow our students to thrive and be successful. I want to take a moment to just share with our alumni to let you know that these campus-driven racial equity conversations, the Alumni Association will be looking at taking some specific steps to offer some of these conversations across the country so that we can incorporate it in some of the leadership training for our societies and our chapters, but also just to engage our alum to make sure that they have that sense of belonging and affinity for the university. That will lead to allow us to have an opportunity to become part of the solutions, have an enhanced understanding of the disparate issues that happen in treatment, but ultimately so that we can become change agents. Hopefully we become allies, change agents, as we seek solutions, because one of the things that this whole episode to me has shown society is that there is work to be done. And so I appreciate your efforts, and I'm hopeful and commit that as president of the Alumni Association, I hope that we have some direct engagement that will be visible, that will really result in some strategic results. As we serve the campus, we serve the state. And so it's exciting to do that. And so with that, I just give you some closing comments. Dean, if you wish, before we go to some questions. You're still muted.
Yeah. Again, I just want to say thank you for this opportunity. I think that, you know, this is the lunch and learn format is a great way to kind of get an opportunity to express some things that are going on and really engage our alums who, you know, are you know, I think these are our biggest advocates. So I think it's important that we're able to let them know what's happening on campus, give them a chance to interact. And, you know, I'm happy to hear from them. I'm not an Arkansas alum, but, you know, I'm really proud to be here and really excited to see where we can go in this college. You know, it's a great program here, a lot of opportunities in agriculture, and just really excited to see where we'll be going in the near future.
Great. And so we'll open it up for some questions. Either you can chat or Mary Kate, how does this work?
If you all want to put some questions in the chat, you're more than welcome to. If you'd like to unmute yourself and ask a question, you're also more than welcome to do that. whichever way you'd like to ask Dean Fields and Dr. Ron here a question. And we might have to wait a few seconds while people are typing up their questions, but.
Well, as we wait for some questions to come in, I just want to thank you all for taking time out of your day to join in on this conversation. Hopefully it's highlighted some things in terms of the role of the university within our state, its mission as a land grant, and some of the exciting things that we're doing to impact the state of Arkansas and across the country, across the world. So thank you all.
Thank you, Dean Fields and Dr. Rainey, for this engaging conversation. I'm wondering, Dean Fields, can you elaborate on what opportunities you see that the U of A could collaborate with the 1890 Land Grant University in Pine Bluff?
Yes. So, and we've already started some of that. I think that there's tremendous opportunity to kind of interact with UAPB. A couple of things that we're doing already is we have what's called a 3+1 agreement in place. That agreement is one where a student can have 3 years at the University of Arkansas at Pine Bluff, and also transfer to the University of Arkansas for 1 year, and they get a degree from both places. So they'll get a poultry science degree from here and an ag sciences degree at Pine Bluff. And so I think that is a draw for both universities. We're working with some of our industry leaders to provide internships to those students in that transition during the summer, so that they could come here to Fayetteville area and get used to the area, have an opportunity to see the industry that they would potentially be working in the future, and learn more about agriculture before they get into our actual poultry science program. And so we're looking at that as one. We're also just looking at ways that we can, kind of utilize Pine Bluff as a natural feeder program for our graduate programs as well, in terms of some of their top students who are interested in graduate school. We want to make sure that we have a space for them, and we are, kind of communicating with them early on to attract them to the University of Arkansas. Several of them go to other schools outside of the state, and I think that we need to show ourselves as a viable option and a college that's very interested in having them as part. They're an 1890 land grant, as you mentioned, so the agriculture is prevalent there. They are working on similar things, and we just want to be there to support. And we're looking at expanding our 3+1 agreements as we want to perfect them a little bit, and then look at other majors where we could potentially do the same thing to attract students. And I think that's one of those programs that I see as just a win-win across the board.
Thank you.
Good to see you, Olivia.
Great question. Are there any others?
We have one from Regina here. She said, thank you to both of you. You mentioned the use of technology in agricultural development and service. So how closely does the college work with the transportation sector in using technology to advance delivery logistics?
Well, I think that we're working, and what we do, we're working all the time with industry in doing that. I think there's some partnerships that we could continue to work on there, but we have faculty who are working in that logistics area also. I guess the bigger component of logistics happens in Walton College, and they're working with food as part of it, but we do have faculty who are partnering there to cover things related to food logistics and transportation. It's part of everything we do. The efficient shipping of our products, because they're perishable, is a big deal. And so we're looking at transportation models to make sure that food is going to the right place, and that we are kind of trying to reduce food miles and also reduce the cost of shipping at all times. So we're working consistently in that area.
Thank you. If anyone else has a question, please feel free to put it in the chat, or, oh, here's one. We have noticed the greenhouse railroad car on campus. Can you explain more about it?
So we call that a container garden versus that container garden actually, if you've ever been in the Union to the restaurant where the wild greens grow, that is where those wild greens come from. So they are in that container. So just another way of utilizing technology. So our students actually are heavily involved in operating or handling production in that. And actually we have students from several majors, but our horticulture students are heavily involved. And so if you open that, there is infrared lighting and also hydroponics being produced. So it's being produced there in hydroponics, and that thing produces at all times because the sunlight is we can control the light in there to continue to grow. So can grow products a little bit faster in that system. And just a way to look at how we can diversify production. If you go to some of the larger cities now, you'll see those containers and you wonder why they're actually producing food in them because of limited acreage. So we look at that as a new way to produce a lot of food in a small area. And so it's pretty fascinating. Been looking at how we could showcase a little bit more about what's happening in there. I've had an opportunity to see it, and it's pretty fascinating to see greens stacked up in different levels and coming in kind of a stage production process. And it's a collaboration with Chartwell's Dining to be able to utilize that container to supply the Wild Greens restaurant in the Union.
Very cool. All right, we'll do this one last question. You mentioned how this pandemic heightened our concern about our food supply. Meat processing has been an issue nationwide. Does the college have resources for those interested in starting a small meat processing plant?
Do we have resources? So, I will say that may be a Ron question on the extension side. I think we are not really developing the resources to start that. We can kind of give some assistance, and I think extension would give assistance on the business planning side of developing that meat processing plant. I will say that I think that is something that is growing during this time, having that alternative market for being able to supply meat in local areas. Not a quick process, I know, but that is something I think that would have some resilience down the road. So Dr. Rainey may have some more insight in terms of how extension could respond to that need in terms of a citizen who's interested in starting a business of that type.
No, absolutely. I'd like to echo that because as part of the university, I'm part of the Division of Agriculture, so we rely on some of the teaching expertise and research expertise coming out of the experiment station in the college. But we have extension faculty that are geared to assist with these types of questions. And we've helped with business plan development, feasibility study development, trying to be components to those processes to help evaluate the market viability of that. So we have a host of ag economists that can assist in looking at some of these processes and systems in that space. One of the things that's happened as a result of this pandemic, places around the country that have those small specialized meat processing facilities, they're in high demand. It is a value-added option as consumers are seeking, have this unprecedented desire to know where their food is coming from and to feel comfortable with how it was produced. So those opportunities for those smaller or specialized niche processing facilities or that type of an opportunity is in high demand. And yes, the extension service can play a role in helping you evaluate those types of opportunities and trying to bring that to a viable business. So please reach out. Feel free to reach out to me, and I'll be happy to assist. I've helped with a number of these efforts, being a rice mill in the River Valley along Central Arkansas. So we definitely have that expertise. And what's really exciting about the Division of Ag is that we cross both research and extension, where we can bring the university to these local communities to find the latest research in terms of the equipment and the processes that will be recommended. And then we bring it to the local communities to help them put together a plan to actually go and develop and try to implement a process to make this happen.
So I'll mention one other area that I didn't mention is our Arkansas Food Innovation Center on campus. So they're also a part of helping, local businesses launch. So I think that would be an area also. AFIC is what it's the acronym for. But AFIC in our food science department would be another resource for someone who's interested in starting a business such as that.
Absolutely, and I'll echo about AFIC. Their assistance with developing a label and just some of those very basic things that you would need beyond getting that physical infrastructure, but the whole process of understanding the consumers to target and looking at your market development plan.
Awesome. Well, in the spirit of saving everyone's time, I'm going to wrap it up here. I do want to thank Dr. Ron Rainey and Dean Deacue Fields. Thank you both so much for joining us today. We really enjoyed the opportunity to hear from both of you a little bit more about things that you are professionals in and considered experts in that a lot of us may not know about. So I do appreciate you all very much for joining us today.